This program and its contents are designed for information and educational purposes only. This program does not render medical advice or professional services and is not intended to be a substitute for professional care. The information provided here should not be used for the purposes of diagnosing or treating a medical or psychiatric condition. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, consult your healthcare provider.
This program is brought to you by Movement Solutions and Soaring Wings Vineyard and Brewing. Welcome to Positive Momentum TV. I'm Diane Silva, and today my guests are Captain Jim Shaw of Soaring Wings Winery and Brewery and Matt McKenna. We're going to continue our discussion on aviation, and Matt was a nice surprise visit, and we're going to kind of have him help me ask questions to Captain Jim, and Captain Jim's going to was wonderful enough to help us understand flying and maybe address some of our concerns. Captain Jim, would you mind giving us just a brief history of yourself?
Yeah, I grew up here in Omaha. I got a private pilot's license in the mid-'70s and decided I wanted to pursue that as a career. So I checked out the Air Force and got a pilot slot with the Air Force, flew for the Air Force for 7 years. I was an instructor pilot for them, and I flew a EC-135s. That was my second tour. And then I got hired by a major airline. I've been flying in that position for 28 years. I'm currently a 767 captain, and I fly around the world. Of course, I also own the Soaring Wings Vineyard and Brewing, which you already mentioned.
Great. And Matt, would you mind giving us a brief history of yourself?
I'm 33 years old, 2 kids and a family, and I'm someone who had a crippling fear of flying, and decided I had to do something to take care of that. And so I'm currently working on my private pilot license, and I decided that I want to do this as a career. So getting ready to start at UNO to become an ATP pilot.
Very good. So we'll have some nice qualifications as far as on this side, the anxiety side, as well as the knowledge and the air transportation and the passion of the flying. And then Matt, you're kind of a little of both because
Sure.
your anxiety has turned into a passion.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing that and just found I wasn't quite qualified to anyway. So do you have any questions you'd like to ask Captain Jim?
I guess I'll address my initial fear of flying, and I still have some nervousness with the airliners. For me, it's all mechanical, and so I guess my question is maybe you can address what they go through to ensure that these aircrafts are pretty solid and safe to fly on.
Well, first becomes the way the aircraft are designed, and both Airbus and Boeing and other manufacturers like Embraer go through very extensive testing on the design of the aircraft and their first prototypes. Never is a prototype perfect when it first comes out. There'll be tweaks like the 787 battery issue. However, as time has gone on, the aircraft designs and the mechanical reliability aircraft have gone up and up and up and up. We talked on an earlier episode about extended twin engine operations and how that being able to fly an aircraft with 2 engines over the ocean required greater reliability of the engines and other mechanical systems. So on these aircraft, the mechanical systems are so much more reliable than they were even 10, 15 years ago, and tremendously more reliable than they were 30 years ago. The other aspect of aircraft design is most aircraft on the airline side, have multiple hydraulic and multiple electrical systems, all as a backup and redundancy to take care of critical failures. Failures will happen in mechanical systems. They're bound to. But when you have several backups to that, the chance of anything bad happening is extremely remote.
Okay, and then just continuing with that, as they update modern aircraft and standards, et cetera, do they go back to older aircraft that are still in service and bring those planes up to date?
You're referring to what we call a process as an airworthiness directive that the FAA would put out, and occasionally, yes. I worked on Swiss Air 111 accident. I was one of the Airline Pilots Association investigators involved in that. I spent years working on it. I also helped to change the way our electrical designs were in aircraft to provide more redundancy and more protection. One of the things they found during that accident was the blankets that were in the ceiling were easily flammable when they weren't supposed to be. So they came out with an airworthiness directive that told them they had to replace those blankets with something less flammable. Other issues that came up from that one accident were changed for future aircraft because they weren't deemed as critical. So airworthiness directives will direct some corrections for things that come up in the light that they didn't know about before. But changes to future design criteria help make sure those future fleets are even more safe.
Interesting.
Cool. Do you have any further questions at this moment?
I guess maybe, again, going with that, are they in a process of discontinuing some of the older planes and now bringing in some new fleets and things like that?
It's a continuing process,
Yeah,
Matt. As aircraft get older, they require greater and greater amounts of inspections that become more and more costly for the airline to accomplish. So what happens is the airlines basically, they're trying to make a profit. So as the cost of maintaining an older aircraft exceeds the cost of buying a new aircraft and all the costs that are associated with that, including overhead and interest and stuff, they make that decision. They reach a point where they say, retire the old plane, we fly it to the desert, and there's a lot of airliners, older airliners parked in the deserts, out in, particularly in Arizona, because they're just too costly to maintain. The FAA has deemed that once you get to a certain point, you have to do these inspections to ensure that the aircraft remains safe.
Interesting.
Which brings me a question on that air transport or on the airliners. How often do they need inspection and overhaul? I know like with the smaller planes, we have so many 100 hours, they have to be done this, and then so often they have to have the engine overhauled. How does that work with that?
It's really just the same, Diane.
Okay.
I can't get, every
Right.
airframe is different, and some airlines get waivers to increase the inspection criteria if they do a different kind of testing. So called an alternate means of compliance. So it's going to vary widely. But when you got an airplane that's 30 years old, a major plane flying back and forth, it's probably near the end of its lifetime.
Well, the point I was trying to make, and so the viewers can know, is all these planes go through stringent examinations, inspections, maintenance continually. They're not just left in service like some of us. Okay, our check oil light comes on, and that's the only thing we do. There's 30,000 mile whatever, and those are strictly adhered to, or
Yes.
the FAA will ground that plane.
Yes, and there's been very rare instances where an airline has missed that.
Right.
And for the most part, they want to make sure that they're following this. It's very extensive, and it's basically difficult to track, except for these new data programs they have that make it a lot easier. Every time an airplane takes off, one of the pilots just did a walk around to check to make sure the airplane looks good. Right. At least once a day, a mechanic usually looks at the aircraft and signs it off in the logbook. After that, like when we fly over the water, when we call our extended twin engine operations or ETOPS operations, they also have to do an additional, more detailed inspection, looking for any faults in any of the computers that might have registered something indicating that something didn't work for one time or another during a flight. Okay. And we have getting more and more computers on the aircraft, and you're going to get some of these error messages. They have to clear them and make sure that they don't reoccur, though. Okay. So another layer of safety.
Well, and that's great to know, because this is information the average flyer, average passenger isn't aware of. Which brings me to a question. Someone asked, can you open the aircraft door while the aircraft is flying?
Not unless you're like King Kong. Yeah, if you think about it, we're flying around typically at over 8 pounds per square inch of pressure on the inside of the door. Those doors are fairly big. Right. 1 square foot is 144 times 8. Mm-hmm. Just 1 square foot of that mini square foot door is more than anybody could probably do. So.
Well, and the reason I'm asking is one of the things, you know, some of us who are fearful go, okay, when we walk to the restroom, we don't want to walk to the, we don't want to get close to that door. Oh my God, what if we knock it open? You know, it's not feasible, it's not viable, it's not going to happen.
That's
but
correct.
we want someone who has the
Sure.
experience.
You still have the fear of it, and I understand that. The fact of the matter is, the areas right around the door is one of the strongest areas on an airplane. It's reinforced extensively so that that door will seat properly and there will be no danger of that door blowing out.
Oh, very good. That's very good to know. Okay.
This program is brought to you by Movement Solutions and Soaring Wings Vineyard and Brewing.